The wind always sounds different out here. Soft, almost respectful, like it knows where it's blowing. 7 white headstones stand in front of me, the names etched deep into the marble. I trace my fingers over each one, feeling the cold stone under my skin. I can still see their faces, laughing in the chow tent, cursing at broken gear, sweating under the Afghan sun. I can still hear the radio chatter, the inside jokes only we understood. They called us a unit, but we were more than that. We were a family. And I was their CO. Their lives were in my hands. They say time heals all wounds, but that's a lie. Some wounds don't close. Some stay open, bleeding, for as long as you breathe. I'm not here today to pray for them. I'm here to remember. To make sure no one forgets the truth of how they died. It wasn't the Taliban that killed them. It wasn't bad luck. It was betrayal. And the man who sold us out wore the same flag on his shoulder that we did. They call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires. I never thought I'd almost become part of that graveyard on a mission that was supposed to be routine. It was August 17, 2016, a recon sweep on the outskirts of Kandahar. Intel said a small insurgent cell had been using a cluster of abandoned mud compounds as a supply point. The orders were simple: confirm, mark, exfil. No engagement unless fired upon. We moved under cover of darkness, 8 of us in a staggered column. Boots sinking into soft powdery dust, rifles at low ready, night vision bathing the world in eerie green. The air was thin, dry. Even your own breath sounded loud inside your helmet. I had point, with Carter, my best marksman, trailing a few paces behind. O'Neill and Ramirez brought up the rear, scanning our 6. We had our comms disciplined tight. No chatter, just short bursts of confirmation clicks. Everything felt clean. Too clean. No dogs barking in the distance. No faint hum of generators from a village. Just silence. We cleared the first compound, empty. No signs of recent habitation. I was about to signal us forward when the first shot cracked through the night. It wasn't from the front. It came from behind us. Ramirez went down instantly, the back of his helmet exploding in a spray of blood. O'Neill barely had time to turn before the second shot tore through his neck. Contact rear. I shouted, diving for the nearest low wall. But it wasn't just one sniper. Multiple rounds came in quick succession, precise, deliberate. These weren't Taliban farm boys with old Lee Enfields. This was professional work. Carter took a round through the chest plate. It didn't punch through, but the impact knocked him flat. He gasped for air, trying to lift his rifle. I scrambled to drag him into cover, my ears ringing from the supersonic cracks of incoming fire. The dust around us kicked up in small violent puffs as rounds missed by inches. In the chaos, I tried contacting base, but our comms were jammed. Something was wrong. This wasn't random. This was an execution. I was halfway over Carter when I felt it, the sledgehammer punch of a bullet tearing into my side. Hot and deep. My breath caught in my throat. The world narrowed. The sounds grew distant. My vision tunneled until all I could see was Carter's terrified eyes. And then, nothing. I came back to consciousness in fragments, sound first, then smell, then pain. The sound was muffled at first. Distant gunfire. The pain was a slow burn at my side, deep and insistent, every breath sharpening it until it felt like someone was twisting a hot blade inside me. I forced my eyes open. The world swam in green, my NVGs were still half on, cracked and useless. I turned my head. Carter lay next to me, his chest rising in shallow, desperate gasps. I pressed my hand to the wound in his armor, trying to find the break, to keep him here just a little longer. "You're gonna be fine, brother," I lied. My voice was heavy with pain. He looked at me like he already knew the truth. His hand found mine, gripping weakly, and his lips moved around words I barely caught over the ringing in my ears. And then his grip slackened. His eyes went glassy. The desert swallowed him whole. I wanted to stay there, to scream, to fight, to go down with them. But training kicked in. Move or die. I scanned left. Miller was slumped over a wall, motionless. Davis was sprawled face down in the dust. The others. I couldn't see. The sniper fire had stopped. Just like that. No pursuit. No follow-up. Because they weren't trying to capture anyone. They wanted us dead. I tried to push myself up, but the moment I shifted, the pain in my side exploded, and my legs buckled. My vision dimmed, black at the edges. I remember one last thing before the darkness swallowed me again, a silhouette moving through the smoke, too well-equipped, too steady to be a local insurgent. He paused over me, studying my face through darkened goggles. Then he walked away. I woke to white. White ceiling. White sheets. White walls that smelled faintly of bleach and something sterile, almost sweet. For a moment, I thought maybe I was dead, that this was some in-between place. Then the pain reminded me I was still alive. It started in my side, deep and throbbing, but spread everywhere. My throat was raw, my lips cracked. My left arm felt heavy, wrapped in 4 lines. I turned my head. A nurse in desert camo scrubs noticed me and froze, as if she hadn't expected me to open my eyes. She gave me a quick smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Where am I?" My voice was a rasp, barely audible. "Kandahar Airfield Hospital," she said quickly, adjusting my 4. "You've been unconscious for 4 days. Just rest." "Where's my team?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her hands fumbled with the tubing, and she looked everywhere except at me. Before I could press, the door opened and a man in uniform walked in, full bird colonel, clean-shaven, eyes cold and unreadable. He stood at the foot of my bed like a lawyer delivering bad news. "Captain Hayes," he said, voice clipped. "You're lucky to be alive. You've sustained significant trauma. The medical board has recommended immediate discharge on medical grounds. You'll be transported stateside in 72 hours. I pushed myself up despite the pain. "Sir, what about my men? Where are they?" I asked again. His gaze didn't waver. "The mission is classified. That's all I can say." "Classified? 7 of my men are unaccounted for. I need to know what happened." I persisted. "That's all I can say, Captain." The words hit harder than any sniper round. He turned to leave. At the door, he paused, then added without looking back, "Sometimes, the best thing a soldier can do, is let go." The door clicked shut behind him. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the room suddenly colder. If they thought I was going to just lie there, take my discharge, and forget my brothers, they didn't know me at all. The transport back to the States was quiet. Too quiet. No banter, no clatter of gear, just the low hum of the C-17's engines and the occasional cough from another wounded soldier strapped into a litter. They flew me into Dover first. I'd been there before, it's where the fallen come home. The ramp ceremony. The flag-draped coffins. The slow, deliberate salute that cuts deeper than any words. But this time, there was nothing. No ramp ceremony. No coffins. No names read over the PA. Just a straight transfer from one transport to a medevac bus that took me to Walter Reed. I told myself maybe the ceremony had already happened. Maybe I'd missed it while I was unconscious. But deep down, I knew better. 3 days after arriving at Walter Reed, I signed my discharge papers, medical retirement, they called it. A nice, clean phrase for being pushed out. They handed me a small box with my personal effects, my uniform folded neatly on top. My side still burned when I moved, but I walked out on my own. I didn't go home. I found a motel and settled in. I had a fight ahead of me, one I didn't want to drag my family into. I went looking for my men. The first stop was Arlington. I went to the section where units from Afghanistan were usually buried. 7 white headstones stand in front of me, the names etched deep into the marble. I trace my fingers over each one, feeling the cold stone under my skin. I can still see their faces, laughing in the chow tent, cursing at broken gear, sweating under the Afghan sun. After I left Arlington, I called Carter's mother. The line rang 4 times before she picked up. I told her who I was, that I'd served with her son. Her voice broke before she even said a word. They told me he died in an accident. Said it was a training mishap. They wouldn't let me see the body. My stomach turned cold. A training mishap. That was their cover. That's how they were burying the truth. I hung up, sat on the edge of my bed in the motel room, and stared at the wall for hours. They weren't just covering up what happened. They were erasing my brothers. And if they could do that to them, they could do it to me. I started my own mission. It wasn't military anymore, it was personal. I called in every favor and pieced together scraps of information from people who owed me, or still believed in justice. I followed every lead I got. The first break came 3 weeks after I got back. One of those who owed me a big one, Staff Sergeant Alex Moore, agreed to meet me. He didn't want to talk over the phone. Alex rotated out of our battalion 6 months before the Kandahar mission. We'd shared more than a few foxholes and bad cups of instant coffee in the field. I was sitting in a corner booth at a small diner when he came. He slid into the booth opposite me without a word. His eyes darted around the room before settling on mine. There was no handshake, no "good to see you." Just a long, heavy look. "I heard about your team," he said finally. His voice was low, almost drowned out by the clink of plates and the sizzle from the kitchen. "Then you know they're not saying a damn thing about it," I replied. He nodded once. "Because they don't want you asking questions." "Who are they?" I asked. He leaned in. "It wasn't the locals that set you up, Hayes. The op was burned from the inside. Somebody sold your position before you even stepped off base. Coordinates, comms frequencies, exfil route, all of it." I felt my jaw tighten. "You're telling me someone in the chain of command," I started before he cut me off. "Higher than that." His voice was almost a whisper now. too high for you to touch without getting yourself killed." I stared at him. "Who?" He shook his head. "Names will get you dead faster than bullets." Before I could push, he slid a folded scrap of paper across the table. "Start from here," he said. "This is the last time we meet. Burn it after you read it," he concluded, and was out of the door before I could say another word. I unfolded the paper and stared at the name. A colonel. The name stuck in my head like shrapnel. I'd heard it before, once or twice during higher-level briefings, but never up close. He was the kind of officer who operated in the shadows of command. No public profile, no open-door policy, no unnecessary conversations. The kind of man whose career was built on secrets. I started with what I could get my hands on. My old ID still gave me limited access to certain military databases. I pulled mission logs for that particular day, August 17, 2016. No record of an op matching our location. The date was there, but the entry was marked restricted, level Omega. That clearance was way above mine. I moved on to satellite imagery archives, cross-referenced the coordinates from my GPS that night with official recon photos. What I found made my stomach turn. There were thermal signatures, human heat signatures, positioned directly behind our route 2 hours before we stepped off. Whoever they were, they'd been waiting for us. Then I found something worse. A classified comms request sent from that particular colonel's office 2 days before our mission, to a liaison in Afghanistan whose name was blacked out. The request was the exact coordinates of our recon route. It was the smoking gun. But finding it was the easy part. 2 nights later, I came home to find the motel room door open. The place looked untouched at first, until I noticed my laptop was gone, along with the external drive I'd been using. My drawers were open, my files rifled through. Whoever came knew exactly what to take. But what they didn't know was that I moved around with an extra hard drive containing all my findings. The next morning, a plain white envelope slid under my door. Inside was a single Polaroid photo of me, sleeping in my bed. No note. No signature. Just a message I didn't need spelled out, "We're watching you." That was the first time I thought maybe Alex was right, maybe this was too big for me. But then I saw Carter's face in my mind, the way his hand gripped mine as he took his last breath. And I knew I wasn't backing down. The first warning was the Polaroid. The second was the car. It happened on a Thursday night. I just left a contact in Arlington, a retired signals officer who'd agreed to meet me after weeks of convincing. He didn't give me much, but what he did say stuck. The colonel isn't just dirty, Hayes. He's protected. You take a swing at him, you better not miss. I noticed the headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it. Late-night tailgaters are a dime a dozen. But these lights stayed glued to me. Every lane change I made, they matched. Every turn, they followed. I told myself to stay calm. Keep driving. See if they peel off, but they didn't. As I approached a bend in the road, they closed in fast. I barely had time to register the bumper slamming into the back of my car before the steering wheel jerked hard in my hands. My car fishtailed, skidding across the slick pavement. Another hit, this time on my rear quarter panel, and I was airborne for a second before metal and glass exploded around me. When I came to, the world was upside down. The car was on its roof, the windshield spiderwebbed, the smell of gasoline thick in my lungs. My seatbelt had locked tight across my chest, digging into the wound in my side from Afghanistan. I heard footsteps crunching on gravel. They were slow and measured. A shadow moved past the broken glass, pausing just outside the driver's side. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his eyes on me. Then, nothing. No shot. No words. Just retreating footsteps and the fading sound of an engine pulling away into the night. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't road rage. It was a message: next time, we won't miss. If they were willing to flip my car and leave me for dead, it meant I was getting close. Too close. The problem was, close wasn't enough. I needed proof, not suspicions, not whispers, but something they couldn't bury under classified. I started where the paper trail was thinnest: money. Betrayals in uniform don't always come from ideology. More often than not, they come from greed. Through an old contact in finance ops, a guy who owed me after I'd pulled him out of a sticky mess in Helmand, I got access to a set of off-the-books transaction logs. These weren't the kind you see in official military budgets. They were buried deep in black project accounts, disguised under logistics and asset acquisition. One line caught my eye: $250,000, withdrawn in unmarked bearer bonds, 2 days before our mission. Authorized by the colonel. The destination account was registered to a liaison contractor in Kabul. That contractor, according to internal rosters, didn't exist. I dug further. The bonds were delivered to a courier service in Dubai, the kind that doesn't ask for names if you pay enough. From there, the trail went cold, until I cross-referenced it with intel intercepts leaked during a NATO probe years earlier. One of those intercepts, dated the night before our mission, was between a known Taliban commander and an English-speaking male. The male gave exact coordinates, our departure time, and our call signs. In exchange, he asked for insurance on delivery. The $250,000. It was the colonel. No doubt now. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. My pulse was loud in my ears. This was the kind of evidence that could ruin him, and, if I wasn't careful, get me zipped into a black bag. In the middle of my findings, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but the message came through immediately: Captain Hayes, this is your last warning to stop whatever you think you are doing. When you've been hunted long enough, something changes inside you. Fear stops being a wall. It becomes fuel. If they wanted me dead, fine, but I'd make sure the truth lived longer than I did. That evening, I called 2 people I trusted with my life. The first was Rachel Myers, an investigative journalist who'd covered military corruption cases before. The second was my friend Jerry, a former signals tech turned cyber mercenary, who could crawl into any server on the planet if you gave him a reason, and a burner phone. We met in the back room of an old machine shop that Jerry used as a safe house. Rachel listened as I laid everything out: the mission, the ambush, the cover-up, the money trail. I slid the hard drive across the table. Once you open this, I told her, you'll have a target on your back too. She didn't flinch. If you're telling the truth, Hayes, this is the kind of story that makes careers. And ends them. Jerry was already typing, his laptop screen filled with strings of code and bouncing IP addresses. Once I pushed this out, he said, it's everywhere. Encrypted dead drops, mirrored servers, offshore storage. They can't kill it without killing the internet. We set a timer, 48 hours. If anything happened to me before then, Jerry would hit send. Another attack came 12 hours later. 3 men, all black clothing, no insignia, broke into the shop just after midnight. Jerry's perimeter alarms bought us 30 seconds. I grabbed my sidearm, Rachel ducked behind the metal lathe, and Jerry shut down his system to protect the data. The first guy through the door didn't get a second step. The second fired wild, his round sparking off the concrete floor. The third pulled back, covering their retreat. When it was over, the shop smelled of cordite and hot steel. My ears rang, but we were still breathing. I knew then the clock wasn't about 48 hours anymore. It was about surviving the night. The night after the machine shop attack, sleep was out of the question. Every shadow looked like a man with a rifle. Every noise sounded like a death sentence. At 4 a.m., Jerry's burner phone buzzed twice, our silent signal. "It's live," he said. In that moment, months of running, bleeding, and hiding collapsed into a single breath. The files, mission briefings, drone logs, payment records, encrypted emails, were no longer mine. They were in the hands of 1,000 strangers in the countries. Journalists. Whistleblower sites. Law enforcement agencies outside the reach of our chain of command. By sunrise, Rachel's article hit the front page of 3 major outlets. The headline cut like a blade, "Friendly Fire or Assassination." Leaked documents reveal secret kill orders on U.S. soldiers. The fallout was immediate. The colonel who'd signed off on the mission was retired within hours. A congressional committee announced a full investigation. Names that had once barked orders at me were suddenly sweating under camera lights. But none of it brought my men back. 2 days later, I went to Arlington. It was early, the grass still wet with dew. I stood in front of 3 white headstones, the same way I had in my nightmares. "I kept my word," I said quietly. My voice broke on the last word. "They'll never bury what they did to you. Not now." I stayed until the sun climbed high and the shadows disappeared. Then I walked away, not because the fight was over, but because it was no longer mine to carry alone. The truth had its own weight now, heavier than a rifle, sharper than a bayonet, and for the first time since that night in the desert, I wasn't running from it.